I want to play a little bit today. And Lynn asked this beautiful question really about repeating patterns. The question was essentially like, if I know that something is not good for me, I'm going to just make this very simple. If I know something's not good for me and I still find myself going back to it, how do I deal? And it was particularly a sequence of deprivation. And all of us know this in a diet, right? Everybody's tried a diet. I know I've tried this where it's okay, I'm not going to eat sugar. And I got to tell you, I haven't been eating much sugar, but I bought some brownies for choir this week and they were in my house. I knew I should have left them in the car. And about 11 o'clock at night, because my body's burning so much fuel right now, I hit like this, oh my God, I need quick energy. And it's like, oh, 4 brownies later, they were little, and they were delicious. So I did not begrudge myself the brownies, but if it hadn't been 11 o'clock at night, I would have made a salad. We go into these old patterns. And I know for what I'm doing, that is not helpful. But we go through deprivation. And then when we come out of deprivation, it can feel like, oh my God, I'm so hungry. I'm so hungry because I haven't been able to, if we're not eating things that we love, maybe I haven't been able to eat this thing I love. In the case we were talking about was around money. I haven't spent money and I've been really conserving. And people do that. We conserve. And then sometimes we hit a bust point. So, oh my God, now I'm going to spend on everything. And a lot of times what happens for us, we spend on a bunch of stuff and then we feel really guilty and we want to take it all back. Now, if you eat the brownies, you can't take it all back. But if you bought a sweater or something like that, you could take it back. So what I wanted to do today, I want to talk a little bit about how do we fill ourselves up? Because I think there's a dynamic underneath this that's really worth sitting with a bit. So I want to just try a little experiment. So you all know we've been playing a lot with getting into our bodies. And I had to laugh because I was telling a friend, oh, I'm working with folks who think they're not very aware of their bodies. And then I said to him, I bet if I put a rock in their shoe, they'd be really aware of their bodies. Think about that. If there was a rock in your shoe, because everybody's had one, don't you get really aware all of a sudden? So we're often aware when there's a pain stimulus, and we can be pretty absent when there's good things or not much going on. So I just want us to get a little bit more aware today. And we're going to be playing the whole time with how do we fill ourselves up? So I want to think about this physically. And if you want to use a piece of paper for this, feel free and just jot a note or two, but try to stay as present as you can. So we're just going to start with a couple breaths. And if you can align your spine, which just means if I was sitting sideways, it means there's a little cord pulling you up. This just helps calm our nervous system because it'll open the chest a little bit. When the chest opens, the lungs feel a little easier. You do it by themselves. So just align the spine and let yourself arrive. Let's take a few breaths here. We're always arriving in every moment. I was in a class the other day and the teacher said, every time we walk through a doorway, we cross a threshold and we've arrived somewhere new. Even when we do it throughout our house. Oh, I'm in the bathroom now. Oh, I'm in the kitchen now. Oh, I'm outside my house. There's a little bit of the brain adjusting context. So just let this be a context where you get to be peaceful and calm and curious and playful and loving towards yourself and towards others. And then just for fun, we're going to start with the hands. Just notice what you like to fill your hands up with. And this is just an observational exercise. So you can think about what you carry around. Oh, these things in my hands. You can also think about the way you fill the time of your hands. So that might be the things you do through the day. If you're a writer, maybe you're typing. If you're a baker, maybe you're kneading dough. But just thinking about the ways in which we occupy our hands. If you're a lawyer, maybe you're writing arguments or flipping through books. Just how we fill up the time and attention of our hands. And you can have a sense of humor about this. You don't have to be really serious unless you want to be. And then think for a moment about how you fill up your lungs. And we're going to try a little experiment with this one because we can. So try for a moment just to fill your lungs to that top line, meaning about 2 inches below your clavicle. This is an area that people breathe, especially if they're really uptight. You don't let themselves have much breath. So just see how that feels. And then see what it feels like to fill up the mid section of your body, so where the lungs are. If you're doing any kind of embodied practice, you might notice that we actually don't just breathe this way, front way. We breathe sideways and we breathe backwards so that our lungs expand in all directions. So notice how you fill yourself up there, and then go one level deeper and see if you can fill your diaphragm, so your belly, all the way down to what's called your lower dantian, which is the area that holds energy about 2 inches below your belly button. In the Western world, we're taught, oh, these bellies are so bad. Nobody can have a belly, which is really tricky when everybody seems to have them. So just give yourself permission to breathe into the belly. And just see which of these filling up of your lungs feels better to you, which you choose on a more regular basis. Because we don't always choose what makes us feel better. And sometimes what makes us feel better isn't what's good for us, which is always interesting. And then while we're down here in the belly, just let yourself notice what you choose to fill up your belly with. Whether it's food, what kinds of food. I have a couple friends who said again to me last night, they never eat a vegetable. I'm like, I don't get it. So strange. If you're filling your days, your bellies with caffeine, with sugar, you might notice whether those actually support your being and they really fill you up, or they just are a placeholder. And no judgment. We're just noticing. Anything we can notice with love and can move. Anything we notice with that judgment and derision generally tends to dig its heels in. I'm not going anywhere. And then just notice if you move up to your heart, what are you filling your heart up with these days? When the world's kind of crazy, it can be pretty easy to fill up the heart with fear, with anxiety. Do that in the mind too. We can do both. But we could also choose love or compassion or presence. And again, no judgment. Just be noticing what you're filling your heart with. Some of you are going to notice there's a hole. There's some place in you, a hunger. You might have noticed that in the belly already. You might have noticed that in your hands. Oh, my hands are idle hands. They want things to do more than they're doing. My belly wants something else. My heart wants something else. Maybe connection. Maybe more love, maybe more compassion. And then just going up to the mind. We're simply noticing in all of these spaces what we're filling ourselves with and what we might like to fill ourselves with. What are you filling your mind with? For a while, I was filling my mind a lot with the news, which didn't actually feel very new. Everything was breaking all the time, urgent. So you might ask if you're filling yourself with curiosity. And you might notice if whatever you're filling your mind with is expanding your mind or contracting it. You can ask that question in any of these areas. And if there's something you would rather have in its place, a lot of this is just habituation. I got used to reading the news every morning. And I went, wow, this is a really depressing way to start my day. What if I read it later? I started reading it later. And I said, wow, this is the same stuff over and over. What if I read it every other day? instead of every day. It's just changing habits to fit something that fits me better, fit something that fits you better. So just take a minute, and if there's anything that caught your attention, either in the ways that you're filling yourself up, that you're like, yes, that is such a good way for me to fill myself up. I'm so happy I'm doing that, and I'd love to celebrate it, maybe even do some more of it. You might notice those first. How smart so many of you are to fill your hearts with great people who love you, your minds with curiosity, your bellies with healthy food, your hands with work that feel meaningful to you, your lungs with deep, good, clean air. Maybe you're exercising or stretching. So you might jot those down on your page to be able to celebrate. One of the basic principles that I have been working with for many years is anything we have some of is easier to create more of. So when we start and feel like, oh, we don't have any good things, it's really hard to create some good things. When we notice we all have good things, much easier. And then you might give yourself just a moment to notice anywhere that you've had some old habits that have filled you up. Maybe buying something made you feel good because that was a substitute for connecting with someone. It became very popular during COVID, as if we needed any help. But as we couldn't connect with other humans, I know I sat home and had many surprising, wonderful things come to my door often. Once COVID was over, I didn't need that so much. Maybe some of us are filling ourselves with a glass of wine every night because we'd really like to check out or calm down. Maybe that serves us, or maybe we'd rather do a meditation or a yoga practice. So just notice some places where what you're filling yourself with are instances of habituation where you might like to have a new habit. When we play in trauma and fear next week, one of the things we'll see is not enough to give up a fear. In fact, we have to replace it for the brain with something else. The same is true of habits. It's very hard just to say, I'm going to quit smoking. What am I going to do instead? That's been feeding some need in me. Nobody in this room is doing any habit for no reason at all. It feeds a need. If we start to see what the need is, we can often feed the habit better. Feed it with something that it likes even more. So just take a few more breaths here, and if there's anything you want to jot down, feel free. We're going to play in this space today. It's funny, we talk about money, and this filling ourselves with what we need really is such a good thing. It goes so far beyond money, but it involves money in so many ways. So it's really lovely to be able to bring this into the space. I want to give just a couple more thoughts to complete this little exercise we did. I wanted to play because this example she gave of spend and deprive and then spend and then feel bad about it and then feel like I'm supposed to give it all away or turn it back, return it, and then deprive again. I thought this is a really good example of why deprivation doesn't work towards any change. It just doesn't work. Because one of the basic principles I hope everybody has gotten in this program is that every part of you is working for the good of you all the time. Every part of you is working for the good of you all the time. So even that habituated cycle of deprivation, expansion, deprivation, it had a way that it made sense in the world when you picked it. For most of us, if we look back to when we were little, which is where most of these patterns get set initially, that's a pattern of we couldn't have what we needed, and maybe we got it in a little gap. So maybe we didn't get a lot of attention, and then our birthdays came. And oh my gosh, it's your birthday, and you get celebrated for one day. So you take it all in, and then there's nothing. Oh, I'll follow this pattern of feast and famine, of deprivation. Our system has some relationship to that pattern that says this is the way that the world makes sense. And we talked a little bit about this last week. But what I really want people to get here is, in order to break the pattern, there's two things that need to happen. The first is we have to make a new experience safe. So if we have been sitting in feast or famine for most of our lives, it's always funny to me. I'll have people come to me and I'll say some pattern they're working on. I'll say, it's going to take us about 6 months to unravel this. And they go, oh, that sounds like so long. And it's because everybody sells them on a magic bullet, silver cure, overnight transformation. You're going to lose 50 pounds in a week with the cabbage diet. And the reality is, if you would just say, oh, I want to lose a pound a week for a year, it's not that hard to do that. But it's hard for us to maintain for a year. So what I'll generally say to people is, well, it took you 40 or 50 years to set this pattern. I think a few months to unwind it would probably be appropriate. Does that sound all right to you? And we laugh because we all have those patterns. So we have to first start to allow something else to be safe. So if you have been on a feast or famine, which is just rooted so deeply in a chaos pattern. So when we talked about those three paths to prosperity, feast or famine is squarely in chaos. It's never stable. So usually the kind of corollary to that would be stable. Can I have an experience of stability where I get what I need when I need it? And you don't have to experience it first. You have to make a possibility in your mind for it first and in your body. And we can start with things as simple as breath and noticing that actually you do get breath whenever you need it, unless you have asthma or something like that. But most people get the breath they need when they need it. Most of us get need when we need it. Right? We're getting a lot of what we need when we need it. So we can start in the places it's already safe. And then expand out by using something like the safety reset. So that's the beginning. And it's a very gentle process where we just say, oh, it hasn't been safe for me to have what I want when I want it. Not safe in the terms of a dinosaur is going to step on you or a tiger is going to eat you, but in the sense that your brain codes what is safe as what you've survived. So it just means that you haven't survived stability yet. So until you've survived stability, the brain goes, not sure about that. I know really how to do this feast or famine thing. We've been getting along for a really long time on that, and it's worked. And then we go over to this thing called stability, and the brain goes, I don't know about that thing. What happens? And all the fears pop up, and we think, what if I have it? I'm sure everybody's had some of these. What if I have that thing that I most want, and then it's gone? What if I have the love I want, or the relationship with a parent, or whatever it might be, and then it gets taken away? Then my heart gets completely broken. So we have to make it safe. So that's the first piece. And the second piece, and the reason I started this morning with what fills you up, is we actually have to be present to what is in terms of the habituation cycle that we're living. So the cycle that Lynn was talking about was, I basically don't spend anything. And this is a really common pattern, by the way. There's probably other people in the room who have this, or they do it with food, or they do it with all kinds of things. So we have to get really present to that pattern. So that first part of, okay, I'm holding, honestly, we're just holding my breath. If you really feel it in the body, I'm holding my breath as long as I can. And then I'll let it all out. But oh my gosh, I'm not sure if it was okay to do that. So I better pull it back in, right? And usually folks who follow that pattern, they feel really nervous being bigger, right? So got to be small. So every time they experience themselves as bigger, then they have to apologize and get small again. But we follow this pattern over and over. Listen for what is the need under the habituation. So meaning there is some deep need in there. So if you're spending, there you are, you deprived yourself, and then you're spending a lot, that could be, I'm spending to feel good about myself. I'm spending to have a like maybe you go out and you buy a beautiful sweater and you put the sweater on in the mirror. Like I know for me, if I'm ever mopey, especially when I lived in Portland and it was gray a lot, you're like, you start to get, oh, is the winter ever going to end? To go out and buy a soft something, it would just be like, felt so good. Ooh. So maybe you buy a beautiful sweater and you look in the mirror and you feel so good. Do you notice you can feel so good without the sweater? The sweater is a vehicle to get you to feel so good. So we just want to look, if it's something like spending, what does the spending create for me? Because it's creating something that's good. It's actually got a reason for that. So if we're able to slow down enough to see what is filling me up in this moment, we'll usually start to see that the thing that we think is filling ourselves up is a placeholder. And then we can start to notice, well, what would get us there even more? Maybe having a massage would get you there even better than buying a sweater. I don't know. Maybe just talking to a friend. Maybe you're feeling like you want connection and that would make you feel way better, but the sweater is better than nothing, right? So if we just take the sweater out, that's why we bounce, we come back. Because if nothing is filling that need, like way better to have a sweater than nothing, right? So if we can sit with that need and start to get really present to what it's filling, then we can start to ask ourselves, what else would fill that need? And we can start to experiment. Oh, so maybe like if somebody's coming home every night, and I've had a lot of friends who've done this over the years, they have a glass of wine every night and they're unwinding. Like I drink maybe one alcoholic beverage a year, or sorry, a month. No, not a year. Feels like a year, but it's not to unwind. It's just a social thing and it's something I enjoy the flavor of. So I'm not going to unwind that way. For me to unwind, I was like, oh, that doesn't help me unwind because it's going to make me feel tired. It's going to make my brain feel foggy, maybe not make me sleep as well. What if I took a walk to unwind? What if I did 15 minutes of yoga to unwind or qigong? And by the way, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with any of these behaviors. Buy the sweater, drink the wine, just be conscious of what it's doing for you and how it fits into your life. That's it. That's the be with what is, because then you choose it instead of it being an automatic pattern that you decided, by the way. And that's the fun thing. You decided on that pattern some time ago, which when you recognize that, it puts you in a place where you can decide something else. Oh yeah, I decided, because I doubt anybody's mom or dad at 2 or 3 said the way to really have a nice calm evening is for you to have a glass of wine, right? Probably didn't happen. Maybe when I was little, they were putting whiskey on our gums to some of you were like, yeah, now you'd be in jail for child abuse for the things they did to me when I was little. For the most part, we made a decision, or we made a decision that buying the sweater made us feel good. And so we can start to choose and make a new decision. And one of the best things here to do is to notice that when you make a decision, it has its own inertia. So like I pre-decide my yoga classes on Sunday for the week. When I wake up and I say, oh, my class is at 7:30 and I don't really want to go, it's more effort to change my decision than it is just to get up and go. Oh, I already decided I was going. Okay, all right, I'll just go. That happened this morning. So we can make a new decision and we take it as an experiment. So you may try, oh, instead of buying a sweater, I'll go for a walk. And you might find that's not it. Maybe you'd like to enjoy some music. Maybe it's like you would like to go hang out with birds. I don't know, hang out with a friend. That's the second piece of this. And the last piece is when I was playing with this and the way this has shifted for clients and myself. So that's what I'm looking at. When I come back to these questions, I go, okay, in the 30 years I've been doing some version of this work, what are the patterns that have been most obvious? The third part of this is you will fail at points because we're human. I got up and had the brownies the other night at 11 o'clock at night. And the worst thing I could have done is be mad at myself the next day for that. So the best thing I could have done, which is what I did, was say, okay, that happened. I had some brownies. Wasn't what I was planning. Let me get up and jump right back on the horse and just be filling myself up with the movement, with the life-giving food that I choose instead. And just say, it's okay to have a brownie, right? It's not the end of the world. Nobody died because I ate a brownie. I hope. If somebody calls me, says there was an earthquake somewhere because you had some brownies, maybe I'll rethink that. But nobody died because you bought the sweater. We make these things so big. Whatever it was, you go, okay, that happened. And we're gentle with ourselves when we come back to center. And we say, okay, because these are habituated patterns, they're cycles that have run for years and years for most of us. So it takes a little bit of time to unravel those cycles.